Hello and welcome to Movie Recap. Today I am going to recap science fiction and drama movie The Martian. The movie starts in the year 2035, where we see the crew of the Ars-3 mission to Mars exploring Acid Alia Planitia on Martian solar day 18 of their 31 Sol Martian days expedition. The crew consists of Commander Melissa Lewis, botanist Mark Watney, IT guru Beth Johansson, pilot Rick Martinez, flight surgeon Chris Beck, and navigator and chemist Alex Fogel. They are on Mars to gather samples. As they're out collecting samples, the crew learns that a heavy storm is approaching. Commander Melissa Lewis decides to abort the mission immediately and orders everyone to return to their Mars Ascent Vehicle, MAV. However, Mark Watney argues for waiting out the storm and brings up the rear as the crew heads back to the MAV. The MAV is their only way to get back to the orbiting Hermes spacecraft. Heavy winds and sand gusts surround them, causing a satellite dish to break off and strike Watney, knocking him out of sight of the rest of the crew. Lewis tries to guide the others to find Watney, but visibility is very poor, and the storm is too strong. They are forced to leave without Watney, and the MAV successfully launches from the planet, with pilot Martinez barely able to keep it from toppling. When the storm finally subsides on Mars, we see that Mark is still alive, but his condition is not good. A rod from his own equipment has impaled his body, causing him intense pain. He manages to remove the rod from his body and tends to his own wound. Upon looking around, he is devastated to see that everything in the camp, which he and his crew built for shelter, has been destroyed by the violent storm. Mark realizes that he now has no way to contact anyone from his team, and he is stranded on the planet alone. Meanwhile, his crew members mourn his death, believing that he did not survive the storm. Mark knows that he will have to wait for 4 long years before the next manned mission is launched, as that is when his crew believes they can return for him. He has almost a year's worth of food, or a little longer if he rations it carefully. Therefore, Watney determines that he has to find a way to grow 3 years' worth of food on a planet where nothing naturally grows. Luckily for him, he is a botanist and devises a plan to grow potatoes as a means of survival. One problem Mark faces is that the next manned mission on Mars will be located 3,200 kilometers from where he currently is. To increase his chances of being found by NASA, he knows he has to travel to that location. Additionally, he plans to grow potatoes for food, but he needs a lot of water to make the Martian soil fertile. Unfortunately, there is no natural water source on Mars. However, his background as a botanist comes in handy, as he knows how to make water using available resources. Mark starts by gathering Martian soil in one place and planting potatoes in it. He begins the process of making water and diligently waters the potato field. Over time, he sees the first pair of leaves emerging from the soil, which gives him hope that he can survive on Mars. Back on Earth, NASA Director Teddy Sanders holds a press conference to announce that the Hermes crew successfully left Mars, but Mark Watney was lost and declared dead. They even hold a big funeral for him at NASA. Mars Mission Director Vincent Kapoor discusses the possibility of using satellites to locate Watney's body, but Sanders refuses, fearing the public and budgetary repercussions of broadcasting images of Watney's corpse. Engineer Mindy Park discovers evidence of activity at the Ars-3 site in satellite photos. Solar panels have been cleaned, and the rover has moved. Sanders and Director of Media Relations Annie Montrose are shown the evidence and realize that Watney is still alive. They acknowledge that they know he's alive, but by the time they can reach him, he may have succumbed to hunger, as the journey from Earth to Mars takes several months. As Watney continues to work on his food supply, he records video logs to document his experiences. He decides to use a rover to make it to the Schiaparelli crater, which will be the landing site for Ars-4 in 4 years. The battery-powered rover can't cover the entire distance, so he modifies it by adding solar cells and an extra battery to conserve power. The pod of plutonium that originally powered their spacecraft serves as a heat source in the cabin. Back at NASA, Watney's colleagues become concerned for him, and they begin making preparations to send food supplies to Mars. However, it will take 3 months to get everything ready, and then the MAV, Mars Ascent Vehicle, will take 9 months to reach Mars, making it roughly a year before they can send him food. It's been 79 solar days, and Mark's potatoes are now ripe. He knows that if he can't establish communication with NASA, his survival is in jeopardy despite having successfully grown crops. Using the rover, he searches for a Pathfinder probe that stopped transmitting in 1997, hoping to establish a connection and communicate his situation to Earth. he hopes to use it to get in touch with NASA. He digs the old probe out of the sand, spreads its solar panels to charge the batteries, and discovers that it still works. Using handwritten signs for the Pathfinder's camera, he is able to send a message to NASA confirming that he is alive. Kapoor is able to receive the message because he and colleagues at the Jet Propulsion Lab have pulled another Pathfinder out of storage, rounded up the engineers who worked on it, and got it working again. They are now able to see Mark Watney. He then asks them through signboards whether they are able to see him, and they reply with a yes, which makes Mark happy that his people know that he is still alive. NASA uses this system to tell him how to hack the rover's operating system so it can transmit text back to Earth. When Watney is finally able to type his messages chat style, he asks how the Hermes crew took the news that he wasn't dead. Kapoor regretfully tells him that the crew hasn't been told. Watney responds with obscenities, not realizing that he has become a public figure and that the whole world is able to see what he is typing. His crew is still on their way back to Earth, and NASA finally goes on to tell them all that Watney is still alive. They are met with mixed emotions when they learn that Watney is still alive. They are happy that he's not dead, but they are not happy about the fact that they left him there all alone on a whole planet. However, they are not able to do anything about it now. The news leaves them guilt-ridden, but Henderson tells them that Watney has stressed repeatedly that it wasn't their fault, and they had reason to believe that he was dead. The people at NASA now go on to tell him that they can reach him by Sol 868, and the rations he has with him will be able to survive until Sol 900, so he should be fine. But things begin to go bad for Watney when the habitat's worn-out airlock explosively decompresses, throwing the airlock some distance while he's inside it and causing his helmet to crack and leak. He uses duct tape to seal the cracks and stumbles back to the habitat to discover his potato crop frozen and dead. With less food, he now figures he can last only a little more than 300 sols or a little longer than that if he is careful. He realizes that he will be dead before NASA is able to reach him. NASA contacts him, and goes on to tell him that he's going to have to eat as little food as possible in order to be able to survive until the time they get to him. NASA and JPL work overtime and quickly launch a probe to resupply Watney. To make their launch as quick as possible, they do not do the proper testing for the probe. Moments after launching, the probe's trajectory shifts severely, and it swerves off course and explodes. All the people at NASA are shattered at the realization that they might never be able to see Watney. Watney too now starts losing hope and goes on to write a message for NASA in which he tells them to let his parents know that their son is not giving up hope and that he is still fighting and will fight till his last breath. But they should be prepared for any outcome. He writes that his parents should know that he loves his job and he's good at it too, so even if he died on this mission, they should celebrate him because he is going to die for a cause that is greater than himself. Meanwhile, in China, two directors from the Chinese National Space Administration, Zhu Dao and Guiming, witness the explosion and discuss helping NASA by offering their classified booster rocket technology to launch a supply craft. Guiming asks Zhu Dao why NASA has not already asked for their help, and Zhu Dao reminds him that it is a top-secret program that NASA would not have any knowledge of. They decide that in the interests of international scientific cooperation, they will contact NASA and offer their booster rocket. We then see another character named Rich Purnell, who is a brilliant astrodynamicist, and he comes up with a plan. He says that if they're able to use the Hermes that is coming back to Earth from Mars, they might be able to save Watney. He says that they will accelerate the returning Hermes around Earth, give it a gravitational slingshot, and send it back to Mars to get Watney. He adds that they can use the Chinese rocket and will resupply the Hermes for its extended voyage. Sanders, however, does not like this idea because it risks the lives of the 5 Hermes crew members, and will extend their mission by 533 days. But Henderson secretly sends the plan and Purnell's course calculations to the crew. The crew talks it over. They understand that the surreptitious arrival of the plan means that NASA brass has rejected the idea. They assume that if they go back to Mars, the 2 military members, Lewis and Martinez, will be court-martialed for mutiny, and the 3 civilians will never be allowed to fly another mission. Lewis calls for a unanimous vote, and they all agree to go back for Watney. Johansson hacks the Hermes computers to prevent NASA from taking control, and they change course. NASA sees them changing course, and they are now on board with it. They go on to use the Chinese help to get them supplies. On the other hand, Sanders realizes that Henderson is behind this, so he asks for Henderson's resignation when the mission is over. Then he's forced to announce that NASA is sending Hermes back to Mars to rescue Watney. After the Hermes has swung around Earth and collected the supplies, they travel back to Mars. NASA and the rest of the world watch with anticipation, with a 12-minute delay. No one on Earth can help by radio. Watney has to remove 5,000 kilograms of weight from the MAV to make it light enough to reach Hermes's orbit. He jettisons most of the seats, all the navigation and control systems, and replaces the nose cone airlock, a crucial structural piece and the single heaviest component, with a torp. Watney goes on to launch himself into the orbit, and the pressure is too much. By the time he gets to the orbit, he is knocked unconscious because of the high pressure. Watney, however, gets back to his senses after a while, but there's another problem. Watney is constantly moving around the orbit, and it is not easy to get a hold of him because he's moving too fast. Watney talks to Lewis, saying he's going to make a hole in his suit and will get himself in the direction of Hermes to get them with the pressure of the air. His colleagues, however, tell him not to do any such thing because it could be fatal for him. On the other hand, Hermes's speed is also very fast. They decide to explode one of the engines to slow themselves down, and it works. They can now see Watney coming towards them. Lewis now gets out on a flying chair to get a hold of Watney, and punctures the palm of his glove to propel himself toward Lewis with the escaping air jet. But he has no control over himself and ends up missing her. However, he runs into the rope with which Lewis himself has been tied to the spaceship. Seeing that he has now gotten hold of the rope, the crew is able to reel them in right away, and they now have Watney. They right away announce to NASA that they have Watney. After returning to Earth, Watney becomes a survival instructor for astronaut candidates. He is now a national hero, and everyone knows and respects him for the courage and valor he showed up there. This is exactly what he wants to teach to the other kids. He tells them of his struggle on Mars, confirming that he did, in fact, grow food using his own excrement, and humorously says he doesn't want to discuss that aspect of the mission again. He tells them that if things should go south for them, they can either accept their fate or start solving problems because that's how you survive, by overcoming one problem after another. 5 years later, as the Ars 5 is about to launch, those involved in Watney's rescue are seen in their current lives, and with that, the movie comes to an end. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.